Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry Shockey. I'm the Director of Youth and Education here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And we're excited to bring you this virtual field trip, which is presented as part of Ohio Learns 360, a partnership of Ohio's 8 PBS stations. And so today we're going to talk about movement and motion and force in football. We're going to look at the science of football. But before we do that, I'd like to give you a little introduction to who the Pro Football Hall of Fame is and what it is that we do and all those sorts of things. And so the first question, I'll give a pause on this, but the first question I do have is, does anybody know anything about the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Has anybody ever been here before? And if you have, then great. If not, I'll give you a little sneak peek into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And again, as I said, we're here in Canton, Ohio. So what I'm going to do, just so you guys know where I'm at, we're going to share screen here and show you guys our building. So let me go ahead and show you that. Let me zoom in and show you an aerial view of our building. If you've been by here, you'll know that, especially if you've been by recently, it doesn't quite look like this anymore. This is an old image from Google Maps. But if I go down to ground level, it gives a more update. This is from the summer of last year, July of 2022. Many of you probably know that this is where the NFL season kicks off. With the opening of the season, the very first preseason game is played here. The Las Vegas Raiders played the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's where this takes place the first week in August. It's also where the induction ceremony takes place. We induct the new members into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So names over the years, last couple of years: Peyton Manning, Troy Polamalu, Brett Favre, Randy Moss, Ray Lewis are some of the guys that have been enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But let me take you down to our museum. And first of all, you noticed I did use the word museum because we are a museum. A lot of people don't realize that. Museums do two basic things. They preserve and educate about history. And we're no different. We preserve and educate the history of professional football. And so here's a look at our main entrance here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But let me show you the inside of our building. Okay, all right. So what we're going to do, let me jump over and show you this Prezi. We're going to be talking about movement and motion here in just a moment. But before we do that, one thing we like to pause on, because very important, part of our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to promote the values of the game. We believe football teaches a lot of valuable life lessons. How to, you get knocked down in life, get back up, how to overcome obstacles and adversity and things like that. And so we have a video that I want to share with you, and I'll talk a little bit afterwards about the video as well. But this video is called More Than a Game. And what it's going to talk about is why football is more than a game, what it teaches about life, and what are some of the character qualities it teaches. And so once we get done with the video, I'll pause for a second and we will talk about the video, and then we'll get into movement, motion, and force here. So let's go ahead and show you More Than a Game.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? That sentiment has been echoed in stadiums, on sidelines, in huddles, throughout the history of this great game. Why? Because it's true. The game of football is a special one. It is a game that for over 100 years has been played by individuals from different backgrounds, with different beliefs, with one goal in mind: to win. It is a game where 11 different people with 11 different unique jobs need to perform at their highest level in order to succeed. And if that is done, something very special happens. Individuals become brothers, rivals become teammates. A special bond is created that will last for the rest of your life. And while wins and losses usually speak to the success of a team, there is so much more that illustrates success in this game. You learn how to work together, that it's important to do the right thing even when no one is watching, to respect yourself, to respect others. It teaches grit, determination, perseverance, and yes, even how to love. Football is an example that no matter your size, your ability, or your skill set, everyone is unique and is a vital member of their team. It could be sports, music, your family, and even in your classroom. So when someone says football is just a game, to them, maybe it is. But it's so much more. Football has always been and will continue to be a way to learn important lessons and values that challenge you to live a Hall of Fame life.
Okay, so let me go ahead and stop share here for just a second, and we'll get back to that here in just a moment. But what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about that video. It talked about football being more than a game. Now, we believe all sports teach amazing things. So whether you play baseball or basketball or volleyball or softball or whatever sport it is, we believe all the sports teach all the things you heard in that video. But we also believe that no sport teaches them better than football because football is just unique compared to any other sport. If you think about this, and you can answer this, and I know we got young people that are tuned in probably from their homes, maybe from after school programs, whatever it might be. Let's think about this just for a second. When you watch a football game, see if you agree with the statement. Would you agree that you see players of different colors that play football? I'm sure you'd say yes. Now, that's not unique to just football. That's not other sports as well. That's the beauty of sports. You get past the external features, you just get down to who's the best person for the job, and whoever that is, regardless of color, we're going to have them participate. So sports is like that in general. But here's something that separates football a little bit more. When you watch a football game, would you agree that you see a lot of different players of different shapes and sizes out there? And I'm sure you agree with that too. Now, that's getting a little more unique to football. Certainly, maybe like the NBA or something like that, you might say that there's different heights. But not only do you have different heights in the NFL, but you have different sizes, just shapes of people and things like that. So depending upon the position. So that's certainly unique. But here's where football is completely unique from any other sport. When you watch a football game, would you agree that there's a wide variety of skills and abilities that are out on the football field working together at the same time? And I'm sure we'd all say yes. Football, there's just so many different people out there. Some that run, some that pass, some that catch, some that throw, some that block, some that tackle, some that punt, some that kick. I mean, just all kinds of different skill sets out there where you see out on the football field players that have unique gifts and abilities and skills and talents and things that make them different and unique and special. And ultimately, I'm sure you guys agree with this, it's a uniqueness of each person. So if you think about it, whether it's Jalen Hurts or whether it's Patrick Mahomes, as great as they are as football players, as great as quarterbacks they are, two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, regardless of how, that if all 11 players on offense were Jalen Hurts for the Eagles or all 11 players on offense were Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs, they'd be terrible. They wouldn't beat an NFL team. They wouldn't beat college teams. They might get beat by some high school teams because everybody's uniqueness is needed because everybody's uniqueness makes them very valuable to the team. And so what's amazing for me is that I can watch a football game and then connect with young people like you guys. And I'll be honest, I see this. I know the same thing is out there here today. Each and every one of you. Each and every one of you have unique gifts and abilities and skills and talents, just like we said on the football field. Things that make you different, things that make you unique, things that make you special. And again, ultimately things that make you very valuable to the teams that you guys play on. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, well, I don't play on any teams. I don't play sports. Well, that's because I'm not talking about sports teams. I'm talking about teams that are, let's just be honest, far more important than sports. Teams like your families, your classrooms, your communities. If you're part of band, if you're part of orchestra, if you're part of a church, if you're part of scouts. I don't know what groups you guys are on, but what I do know is that you're on a lot of different teams in life, and those teams need your uniqueness. And football paints a beautiful picture of how teams should operate in a time where it seems like we're separating so much because of our differences. Actually, we should be celebrating our differences because it's our differences that make teams great. And football paints a beautiful picture of this. So let's go ahead and jump back into our Prezi, and we're going to get into movement and motion here in just a second. So our mission here at the Hall of Fame is to honor the greatest of the game, preserve its history, promote its values, and to celebrate excellence together. Our values are commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty. One of the most popular questions we do get here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is, why is the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio? And some of you may ask that. Some of you may know the answer, being more local than some of the groups we connect with across the country and all over the world. But there's actually 3 historic reasons why. The NFL was actually founded here September 17th, 1920, just a few miles down the road from here. The very one of the first powerhouse football teams played here in Canton, Ohio. They were part of the original league in 1920. They were a team called the Canton Bulldogs. They're the first back-to-back NFL champions back in 1922 and 1923. And then lastly, a name that some of you might recognize, a guy by the name of Jim Thorpe, actually played here in Canton, Ohio. And so he played during the 10s and during the 20s here in Canton, Ohio. And Jim Thorpe, still known as one of the greatest athletes of all time, played pro football, played pro baseball. And then on top of that, in 1912 in Stockholm, Sweden, won 2 Olympic gold medals, and arguably 2 of the toughest events you can compete in, the decathlon and pentathlon. So it's impossible to compare, let's say, Jim Thorpe with, let's say, LeBron James. But in any era, to play 2 pro sports and be good at them, and win 2 Olympic gold medals, it's really unheard of. So those are your historic reasons why. But today, what we are going to look at is movement and motion. So when you look at great players on the football field, like the picture you see there with Russell Wilson, there's a lot of ways that science can relate to football. There are many science terms that relate. So let me pause for a second, give you a chance to think about this. What are some science terms you can think of that relate to the sport of the NFL? Just say those out loud. And so I'm guessing probably a lot of different things came up, but we're going to look at 3 in particular. And the first one is movement. Now, movement is an act of changing physical location of position or having this change. Movement is changing your original location. And we're going to get this video here in just a second. But what I want you guys to do is we're going to do a little exercise here. So can everyone stand up, please? Give a second for that. Now, you know what? I changed my mind. Can everyone sit down? No, you know what? I reconsider. Let's everyone stand up again. Now let's sit down. Let's stand up. Let's sit down. Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. All right. So I'm just messing with you guys. That had no particular reason I had you do that. So I'm just having fun here today. But I did have you stand up and sit down to demonstrate something. By definition, by standing up and sitting down, did you move? Was that a movement? Of course, you'd say, yes, it was. Well, what's really cool about the NFL is that there's not just standing up and sitting down in chairs. There's some crazy, crazy movements because there are some crazy, crazy athletes in the NFL. And so I'm going to show you a video from a guy by the name of Jerome Simpson. Has anybody ever heard of the flip? And if you haven't, it's pretty cool. We're going to look at the science of the flip. Well, think about this. There's a guy that jumped over a player. Not only did he jump over a player, he did a flip while doing that. Not only did he do a flip, but he stuck the landing. Not only did he stuck the landing, but he scored a touchdown all at the same time. We're going to look at the science of that. Now, depending on the age groups that are tuned in here today, there might be some words that you're very familiar with. There might be words, honestly, there's words in here that I don't even know, like linear velocity and angular velocity. I don't even fully understand those. But what I want you to appreciate is the movement, number one. But then number two, I want you to pay attention to how many pounds of force he pushed off the ground with. So I'm going to ask you that at the end.
In NFL folklore, there's the catch, the drive, and this season, a new phrase was created, courtesy of the Cincinnati Bengals' Jerome Simpson, the flip. And it's our top play of the year. As Simpson approaches 6'2" Arizona defender Darrell Washington, he converts his linear velocity into angular velocity and pushes down with roughly 650 pounds of force. This propels his center of mass more than 6.5 feet in the air. Near the apex of his jump, he's rotating around his center of mass, which acts as a pivot point, at almost 290 degrees per second. Probably not a fast enough rotation for a clean landing. But in midair, Simpson grabs Washington's helmet. This shifts his pivot point, effectively extending the length of the lever his body creates by over 2 feet. This increased length speeds up the linear velocity at the end of the lever, his feet, by over 35%, helping him finish his rotation. All told, he was airborne for 0.933 seconds. That's longer than Michael Jordan was in the air for his iconic free throw line dunk. This flight time allowed Jerome Simpson to stick the landing and our top play of the year.
Okay, all right, so here's what I want you to do real quick before we move on to motion. Can everyone stand up again? I promise I won't make you sit down right away. All right. And can you find a partner, or actually maybe let's do this. Let's do this instead. We'll have one person stand up, depending on where you're at. If you're in a group of people, then just one student stand up. And maybe a teacher or a parent that's next to that student, or an older brother and sister, or whoever it might be, stand up next to that student. I want you guys to face each other. Shake hands. Bow. Do a little dance. I'm just messing with you guys now. But here's what I want you to do. That student, I don't want you to think about this. Just go for it, okay? On the count of 3, I want you to leap over that person, do a flip. Ready? Don't even think about it. Just go for it. 1, 2, 3, go. Go. Probably none of you tried it because it looked next to impossible. But I don't know if you heard, did you guys hear how many pounds of force that Jerome Simpson pushed off the ground with? That's right. 650 pounds. 650 pounds. So he drove off the ground with a lot of power, which allowed him to jump that high. And we'll get back when we start talking about force and when we talk about different types of force, push and pull here in just a minute. Now, what you see on your screen, the next word. So we looked at movement. Now we're going to look at motion. Now, motion is the action of or process of moving or being moved. Motion is the act of moving yourself or someone moving you. Now, remember, an object at rest wants to stay at rest. An object in motion wants to stay in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. How many of you have ever heard of that before? Depending on your age group, you maybe have. Does anybody know what that law is called? That's right. Newton's first law of motion. And the second part of that definition, we're going to look at through the game of football, through the NFL. An object in motion wants to stay in motion. Can somebody, is there in football, let's say if Patrick Mahomes takes off the football or Jalen Hurts takes off the football, are they objects in motion that want to stay in motion? Yeah, of course. And they want to stay in motion until they do what? That's right. Score a touchdown. They want to stay in motion until they score a touchdown. And so unless they are acted upon by an unbalanced force, who is the unbalanced force that wants to stop Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts from scoring a touchdown? Yeah, the defensive players, the defensive back, the other 11 people that their job is to stop them. That is Newton's first law of motion playing out every second in the NFL. Now, some of you might know this if you're older. That object, typically an object in motion that wants to stay in motion, typically wants to stay in motion in the same trajectory and the same, same momentum. But when it is being acted upon by an unbalanced force, it's resistant to wanting to slow down. Well, that's something called a science term called inertia. And I'm assuming you guys would all say this, is that if Jalen Hurts being tackled, does he go down easier? Or does he fight to stay in motion? He fights to stay in motion. That's inertia. So let's look at Newton's first law of motion through the game in the NFL.
Whether it's a running back breaking through the secondary or a wide receiver on a foot race for the end zone, most defensive players in the NFL have a single goal in mind: to get downfield as far and as fast as possible.
We're thinking, wow, I've got to get from A to B within a certain time frame, and I can't let this guy throw me off track. So it's kind of like a chess match at that point in time. It's the battle to see who's the toughest.
Defenders, on the other hand, have a different goal: to stand in the way of the offensive player and stop his forward progress.
When you're coming in and making that tackle, you've got to come in and you've got to stop him right there on the dime.
Who wins this epic battle between the ball carrier and the defender? Newton's first law of motion helps supply some answers.
Newton's first law says that if an object is at rest, it requires an unbalanced force to make it not be at rest. Or similarly, if an object is in motion, it tends to stay in motion in a straight line at a constant velocity unless an unbalanced force acts on it.
In football, we see unbalanced forces whenever one player exerts a force on another and causes him to change his direction and/or speed.
So imagine that a quarterback is just taking the snap from the center, and a lineman gets free from the opposing team and is coming from the other side. And when they collide, you can see an unbalanced force acting on the quarterback, driving him across the field in the direction of the charging lineman. That's about as unbalanced as it gets.
In physics, a player's natural resistance to that unbalanced force is something called inertia.
On the football field, you can think about inertia as being a running back who's already in motion, doesn't want to change the fact that it's already in motion. So it's going to take some external unbalanced force, i.e. a defensive player, to stop that running back.
Consider former New Orleans Saints running back Deuce McAllister, who at 6'1", 231 pounds, used his inertia when running to make him hard to tackle.
The size of the player is important to the concept of inertia because higher mass means more inertia.
But a player's mass is different from his weight. Mass is a measure of how much matter an object has, while weight is a measure of how strongly an object's mass is attracted by gravity.
So for example, a body on Earth would have the same mass as that body on the moon, but it would weigh less on the moon because gravity is less on the moon than it is on Earth.
NFL players with more mass have more inertia and are harder to move off their path. This concept even works on a quarterback sneak, when a quarterback uses the combined mass of his entire offensive line to gain a yard or two.
If you've got an offensive line that can overpower the defensive line, that's just what you do. You get on their hip and you just fall, and you just ride that wave forward.
In the NFL, whenever players go head-to-head, it's Newton's first law of motion that helps determine who will win the battle of the gridiron.
Okay, all right, so we saw Newton's first law of motion. So we looked at movement, we looked at motion, and now we're going to look at force. Now, force is strength or energy as an attribute of physical action or movement. Force is how well you can move something. So we're going to look at two players here, and let's see who has more force. So we have a 5'10", 185-pound Hunter Renfrow versus 6'1", 284-pound Aaron Donald. So which player has more force when they're, let's say, making a tackle or blocking someone, and why? And I'm sure we'd say Aaron Donald because of his size and his strength, his mass, his weight, all those things that come into play. Now, running or juking could be a different story when we talk about pushing off with their plant foot. So when we talk about two science terms that probably many of you have learned, acceleration, deceleration, things like that. Well, Aaron Donald, because of his size, it takes him a little longer to get up to his top speed versus Hunter Renfrow, who can get up to his top speed a lot quicker because of his size. Well, that's the same thing when turning and cutting. Now, we don't know for certain. I've got three boys that a 9th grader, 6th grader, and a 20-month-old at home. And I've done numerous science fair projects, you know, with my two oldest. And so if I were to have an educated guess or a hypothesis, I would guess that Hunter Renfrow would actually push off the ground with more force than Aaron Donald when he's making the cut. And the reason why I'd say that is because I think he can stop a lot quicker, which in turn would put more force in that ground to turn the other way and push off. I could be completely wrong. I don't really have the way of testing that hypothesis, but that would be my guess. And so we see that there. So what I want you guys to do now, if you can, everyone stand up again. I'm going to stop share for just a second. Okay, here's what I want you to do. On the count of 3, I want everyone to jump. The first jump I want you to do is a teeny tiny jump, teeny tiny. but I do want you to jump. So get off the ground on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now this time, what I want you to do is I want you to jump as high as you can. Like look up at your ceiling, whether it's you're at your parents' house or you're at school or wherever you're at. I want to look up and say, I'm going to hit my head on the ceiling. All right, ready? Here we go. The count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, everyone take a seat. Now, what was different between the first jump and the second jump? Obviously, you're going to say you jumped higher. You pushed off the ground with more force. Exactly. Maybe not 650 pounds of force like Jerome Simpson, but you definitely push off the ground with more force. Now, you have different muscles in your body. They're called eccentric and concentric. Some that are designed to push, some that are designed to pull, and they work in tandem together in transition, like your legs. Your quadriceps are designed to push, the back of your legs, the hamstrings are designed to pull, and they work together to help get that explosiveness so you can jump up off the ground. And so that's why you're able to get up the ground so high. Now, think about this for a second. Everyone make a muscle. Now, I don't know why it is. Why is when you say make a muscle, everybody goes like this? The bicep is always the one that gets all the credit. And so no one like flexes their tricep or their back muscle or something like that, or like, hey, look at my calf muscle or something like that. They always flex the bicep. But let me ask you, when you made that bicep flex, did you push out or did you pull in? You pulled in. So bicep is a pulling muscle. Tricep on the backside, if you push out and straighten your arm really firmly, you'll feel your tricep flex back there. That's a pushing muscle. Your chest is designed to push. Your back is designed to pull. And so we see that these two things here come into play. So let's go ahead and go back to screen share. We'll jump back into our Prezi. All right. So now we're going to look at different types. And so when we look at movement, there's different ways. I always use the example if you're playing tag in the backyard. Different ways you can move playing tag, right? You can run in a straight line to get away from someone. You can do a zigzags. You could possibly do a spin move. Well, the first one we're going to look at is a straight line. So let's look at some examples of straight line in the NFL movements. Now it's a straight line, but that's not a movement. That's a straight line as well, but that's not really a movement. But here's what we're talking about: the straight line this way. And we're going to look at one that's probably pretty popular with you guys: the 40-yard dash.
DC just told me John said he's going to run 4.2. That's what he told me.
There he goes.
He's moving.
Where'd our number go?
I don't know.
We got that number for you. He's limping?
He's limping.
4.22. No way. So
all right, so that is the fastest 40-yard dash time in NFL history. Now we have Rich Eisen.
Be relaxed. Just let it fly, man. Don't think. Just react. Pretend someone's going to hit you on the butt with a paddle. Fly out her.
And 6.10. Now 2 seconds of the 40-yard dash is pretty significant. But the bottom line is a lot of scientific reasons why John Ross is faster than Rich Eisen. But the bottom line is, did they both run straight lines? Yeah, they did. They did. So we see straight line. Now we see zigzag. Can I have the students stand up? Every one of the students can stand up wherever you're at. And go ahead and show me a juke move, a zigzag move. If you're trying to juke someone, let me see those. All right, very good. Now, have you guys ever heard of Barry Sanders? Some would argue he's probably the greatest zigzagger in NFL history.
Sanders making room on his own. Barry again. Flips a tackle. And he gets it away to Barry Sanders in the open field. And look at Sanders make moves. 1st and 10 from the 41. Sanders. And Sanders blasting out and juking his way inside the 15th. Hornswoggle. Here's the handoff to Sanders. And he just skips away from tacklers.
Just unbelievable how he gets through these areas.
Sanders found the hole. Puts the move on. Oh, look out. To Sanders. Oh, what a move. Oh, my.
He's floating. He's gliding. He's cruising. He's stopping. He's now cutting back. And now he's gone.
Out of the way to Barry off the right. Barry to the 45 and bumps to the 40. Breaks it 35, 30. He's gone. Unbelievable. Touchdown.
All right, we see Barry's there. Now there's another guy, Dante Hall. Let's just watch his first move. Some might argue that he's every bit as good as zigzagger. Look at this first one.
Rocky Mountain Thunder, and then the throw underneath the ball. Boy, look at him. Like a cat. Look, now it's in the clear.
Okay. All right. Now we look at circular. Now, some examples you already saw circular: running backs, the spin move, wide receivers, quarterbacks trying to get away from a defender. But also defenders use the spin move to try to get to a quarterback. And there is a guy by the name of Dwight Freeney. Think about this: 6'5", 270 pounds, and spins about as fast, given his relative mass, as an Olympic figure skater doing a double toe loop. Then we're going to look at the science. And this scientist, make sure you tune in all the way to the end, because this scientist, in the name of science, so you crazy science people out there, I don't know if you'd ever let this happen, he's going to let Dwight Freeney hit him full speed.
Dwight Freeney is one of the most dominant pass rushers in the NFL, totaling an average of about 10.5 sacks per season. We're going to analyze one of his most effective pass rushing maneuvers, the spin move. Now, one of the moves that you're best known for is the spin move.
Yep.
How have you perfected that?
I just keep on doing it. I mean, I basically wake out of the bed spinning into the bathroom. It is what it is. It's just kind of something I've always done.
We want to measure how quickly you can spin.
Let's go.
You ready to do this?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Here's a breakdown of a Dwight Freeney spin move. Freeney sets up his spin move by planting his left foot at a 90-degree angle. This opens his hips to the middle of the field and creates the leverage he'll need to spin.
Most people see on the top your hands swinging and all of that. But everything starts from your legs, and leverage and power, everything is generated from down low. So you have to really drive into the ground.
Freeney then does two things that are counterintuitive. He leaves his feet and turns his back on his opponent. While airborne for 0.3 of a second, Freeney smartly pulls his right arm in closer to his body.
The outside of your hand is very important because that kind of brings you around.
This propels him to a peak angular velocity of almost 500 degrees per second. Given his relative mass, Freeney spins about as fast as an Olympic figure skater doing a double toe loop. A 270-pound body spinning that fast makes it difficult for a lineman to keep Freeney in front of him. And once he gets separation, it's a foot race to the quarterback. Freeney accelerates to 90% of his top speed, covering about 7 yards in 1 second. And to find out how much force a Dwight Freeney open shot generates on a quarterback, we had him hit someone for real. Freeney delivers a massive hit of 2,800 pounds of force. That's like getting punched by Mike Tyson and George Foreman in their prime at the same time.
Oh my God. He knocked me out of my shoe.
For Sports Science on ESPN, I'm John Brinkus.
Now, I don't know if any of you are crazy enough. I mean, think of, he hit him so hard he knocked him out of his shoe. I mean, that's crazy. So all in the name of science. But Dwight Freeney, being the gentleman that he is, he at least picked him back up after he knocked him down afterwards. Now, we see back and forth in the NFL when we talk about movement. What are some back and forth movements? Well, there's obviously moving that way, but also there are certain plays where they pass the football back and forth. One of those is the flea flicker.
Sebastian Vollmer is just an incredibly big man, and 6'7". Bill Belichick says long arms, so if he gets those arms on you, you're not going to get to the quarterback.
Back to Brady. Brady looking for Moss. Touchdown, Patriots.
All right, and then another one, a lateral.
Ferrier was coming in on Brady. This is not. That's a lateral going back to Brady. Now Brady wanting to go long. Gaffney's waiting for it. Gaffney is in for the touchdown right over Anthony Smith.
Okay, so we see a lateral. Now, when we talk about force with different types of force, we talk about push, we talk about pull. So what are some examples of push in the NFL? Why don't you guys give me some? Give me some examples of push in the NFL. Where do you see pushing happening in the NFL? And there's a lot of different examples of that. But one of those, there's a position. What position is that their job is just to push people? Yeah, the offensive line. The offensive lineman, exactly. And so we look at an example here, Michael Thomas versus Will Shields. Who's going to be better at blocking someone on defense and why? 6'3", 212-pound Michael Thomas, who currently is a wide receiver in the NFL, versus 6'3", 320-pound Will Shields, who's one of our Hall of Famers that played a number of years back with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Will Shields is going to be a better blocker for all the same reasons we talked about at the beginning with force, when we talked about size and strength and those kind of things. The other thing about offensive linemen that makes them so good at blocking is just their mass, how big they are, their wingspan, how wide they are. I mean, you put 5 of those guys in a row next to each other, that's a lot. They're wide people just because their overall size. They're hard to get around. And so just that size makes them great blockers. And let's look at Will Shields in action.
As a 14-year fixture on the Kansas City offensive line, Will Shields started 223 of 224 games, pushing the Chiefs to lead the league in total yardage gained in both 2004 and 2005. Shields was a key member of the Chiefs offense, unlocking 4 division titles and 6 playoff appearances, earning him 12 consecutive trips to the Pro Bowl.
Okay, so we see push. Now we're going to look at pull. So give me some examples of pull in the NFL. Where do you see pull in the NFL? Now, I'm sure some of you would say tackling is pulling people down, maybe catching the football, pulling the ball back. Quarterback takes a snap, pulls the ball in. A lot of examples of pull. Well, guess what? Some examples of pull in the NFL aren't always legal. What do you think those are? Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Holding penalty sometimes is a pulling penalty because they're pulling the players in, they're pulling the jersey, something like that. Face mask penalties, you guys said. Face mask, horse collaring. You can see pulling those can be dangerous as well. So what we talked about here today, I'm going to stop sharing here. We looked at the science of football. We looked at 3 terms. We looked at movement, we looked at motion, and we looked at force. And we looked at specific types of each one of these. And so hopefully this gives you some interesting ways to look at science. So depending on what age group you are, whether you're younger, maybe you haven't quite studied some of these terms yet. So now you're going to be out ahead of the game because you're going to remember, oh yeah, we talked about that at with the Pro Football Hall of Fame when we learned about movement, motion, and force. And some of you are going to be, this is going to be a way that now you can help remember it as you're taking it, or if you've already taken it, help you remember it in the future when you go over these things, because typically you'll go over these things every year all throughout science. You know, you go back to force, you go back to movement, you go to motion. Even if you're a junior or senior in high school, you'll get back to the basics, if you will, before you go on to some of the more advanced things. And so this is what I encourage you to do, is next time you watch it, whether it's in the fall or whatever it might be, you watch a football game. Here's what I want you to do, like especially on a Sunday, if you're sitting down with your family, and if your family's sitting there with you, it kind of ruins it right now. But if they're not, this will be cool. So when you're watching that game on a Sunday, you're watching the Cleveland Browns, let's say, about the 3rd quarter, I'd say wait till at least the 3rd quarter and just sit there and say, that was an example of Newton's first law of motion right now, right there. And don't look at your parents to see, see what their reaction is. Just keep watching as if you said, like, can you pass the popcorn or something like that? Or Mom, can I have a drink? Dad, can I have a drink or something like that? A drink of water. So just be funny to see their response. And then tell them what you learned about with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that you learned that from a while ago. So I think that would be funny. So with that being said, this is going to conclude our program. We'd like to thank you for joining this virtual field trip program from us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, presented by Ohio's PBS stations. Now, before you disconnect, please, please, please take a moment to provide your feedback at the URL and QR code shown here. You'll see that pop up on your screen. The results of this survey will be used to help improve future programs. The survey should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. And get this, and all who complete the survey will have the opportunity to enter a drawing for one of 2 $100 gift cards of your choice. I might enter the drawing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to. But you see the QR codes on the screen. You see the QR code or the URL. Please, please, please make sure to go and fill out that survey for a chance, obviously, to win a $100 gift card too. So that's pretty awesome. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you to Ohio Learns 360 and PBS for helping the Pro Football Hall of Fame get this information out to students all across the state of Ohio. This concludes our program. Take care.